What's up, freaks? Good morning. Just got into the Moonbase Studios here, and I saw that we got a package in the mail from Sound Service Germany. On the side of the package it says Zoom H2, but it's not the Zoom H2. Today we're going to do an unboxing of the new Zoom LiveTrak L8. Stick around. That's what's supposed to be in this box. All right, guys, here we go. So, your trusty Leatherman here. Let's see what we got. Bubble wrap. There you have it. That's the original packaging for the LiveTrak L8. Details on the back. That's what it looks like. Let's open it up. All right, guys. So yeah, now we're in the podcast studio here, and as you can see, we have been using the Zoom L12 LiveTrak for a long time for our podcasts, for the Progcast, which has been going for a year, the FREQS podcast, as well as like external podcasts that come into the studio. And the L12 is great. Might be a little overkill for what we generally use it for. I mean, if you start getting into having like 8 people at a time, 8 mics, then it's great. But I mean, in this small space, we're usually 2 to 4 people. Sometimes somebody's calling in, and that's actually one of the features of this that I'm excited about trying out. But I think that the L8 will actually be more suitable in this studio, in this setting, and the Zoom guys were super cool. Sent us one along to check out, and let's open up the package. So... all right. Looks like a little included items list here. Well, that'll be handy. Double check that we have everything. Here's a quick guide. So nowadays, the manuals for these, of course, people generally have them as PDF downloads, and the quick guide's useful because you jump right in and don't need to waste all the paper. I think it's a good thing. So as the box indicates, we have the AC adapter here. Boom. Looks like a USB. It's going to be cool. I can already see the footprint of this is much smaller than the L12. And it's going to free up a lot of space on the desk here too. So we got a couple of cables here that looks like this is probably, this is a stereo mini jack, probably for the phone. Because you can connect a phone to this, and this is a USB cable to USB-C or mini USB, it looks like. Maybe that's for the power. Seems rather small, but maybe it's for a charger. Let's see. Charger for a phone. Oh, wow. It's small and light. I love it already. Now there you have it. And I'll just refer back to this to double check what we have. So yeah, the TRRS cable is probably going to be connecting here to the 7th and 8th channel for, using your phone to make calls. And then there's a USB cable, which is this going to be a mini USB power supply? I'm looking for it. Sorry. I see the lock, I see the power. There it is on the bottom. And it is indeed a mini USB power input that you then feed out of here and then run, I guess, into the adapter that it comes with. I wonder if a strong power bank could also power this thing. Have to check the specs for the next video. But this is pretty cool. And let's move the box out of the way and you can get a sense of like the difference in size between this and the L12. There you have it. I mean, what a space saver. I can see right off the bat there are 3 monitor outs plus the master out, which I guess is also capable of having a monitor, so maybe 4 headphones outs. Plus you have 6 mic inputs, and then the 7th and 8th for instrument cable inputs, and then this guy also runs into 7 and 8, which are both stereo inputs for your phone. So that's definitely something we want to check out, because we've been using the L12, and we downloaded the Soundflower driver to try to run Skype through the computer into the L12. But it kept running into issues with this because we were trying to run both the Zoom L12 driver with the Soundflower, so that we could be using 2 drivers at the same time. You know, where you create an aggregate driver in the Mac sound driver, or an aggregate sound device, which is basically using 2 different sound drivers, and that got a little clunky, partly because maybe we were not as experienced with how to do that with the L12 when we jumped in and built the studio, and maybe we could have taken a little more time in the meantime to sort that out, but we sometimes had issues, and there was always a little problem solving. So I'm really looking forward to being able to actually just use this with my iPad or with a guest's phone to do a Skype call or FaceTime call or just an audio call for incoming interview calls and stuff like that. That's going to be really handy. The other nice thing about this size is that we can actually take it on the road with us. We do a lot of on-location interviews, not just for the podcast, but also for video production and for FREQS and other projects that we do with Stuus Media here at the Moonbase. So this is actually really handy because it's also pretty small, would more easily fit into a backpack, for instance, or a small like laptop case than the L12. And you still get a lot of functionality, it looks like, with this. I mean, I'm going to spend some time with the quick guide setting this up on the computer, and then we'll have a go at trying to incorporate that. I'm looking forward to it because we have some new podcast projects coming into the studio, and those will be the projects where I really put this to the test. And some of the things I'm really looking forward to is the fact that it has these built-in sound pads, which are a bit small and feel a bit hard to the touch when you press them. But during the podcast, for instance, the progressive rock and metal show that Dario Albrecht and I do, we have some sound effects that we use all the time, like the somebody progged in here sound effect, which is like a foghorn, and like cheering sometimes, or wah, wah, wah. And it will be cool to have those programmed into here for that. I have to figure out how that works with programming, because maybe like only one show at a time can kind of be in here, and then you have to, for every time you want to set up that show, you would have to set up the sound pads. But maybe that's okay because some of the other shows we do are external, and maybe they don't need to have that functionality. But what we generally have been doing to work around that is, while we're talking and we know that we wanted to put a sound effect because somebody made a bad pun, then we hit the M on the keyboard, and in Audition that sets a marker, and when we go back through and do the edit, we can see where to place. Let's say, oh, this was meant for this, and we put the sound effect there. So this will be kind of cool to just do it live. And I have to, I'm really curious about the routing of that. Like, if you have the sound pad, if it's possible to route those. I mean, I see they're running also on the 7 and 8 channel strip here. So hopefully we can set up a an independent channel in Audition to have those sound effects go to, so they're not on the same channel as the voices. I'm sure that's included. I just occurred to me as we were talking about it. So this panel looks very different. I see the typical play while it's not lit up. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe we just quickly put some power on this, right, and see what it looks like when it's lit up. Okay, so we've got the power in. Going to flip it on here. There it comes. Ooh, I like that. It's saying to please wait. There's no card in it. It doesn't come with a card, apparently, or at least, at least the one that the guys at Sound Services sent me does not have a card. So I will have to get a SD card thrown in here before I do anything. Because if I recall correctly, the L12, even if you're running this as an input device on your computer, as a sound card basically for your computer, you still need to have a formatted SD card inside the machine. So I'm assuming that's going to be the case for this. But now that this is lit up, we can actually see. And maybe this is a bit too small on the camera, but here you have some interesting buttons. So yeah, just jump forward, jump back, play, stop, record arm, overdub. Kind of interesting. I wonder if you press that and it's overdubbing and then you stop it. I have to check how what that functionality is. We don't do a lot of overdubs. We didn't do a lot of overdubs with the L12 because we use that primarily in the podcast studio, and we haven't really needed to do many overdubs. We have a separate vocal studio in the Moonbase here, where we would do any like proper voiceover stuff. And that, in that case, we would be working in Cubase and, with our engineer, and, we would be not using this device for that. We're primarily using these for podcasting or field mixing. And once again, in the field mixing for video, we would rarely use the overdub. So it looks like maybe this is basically just adjusting what your... So like we're on the recorder here, or when you switch it to effect, these all change. And here you see a bunch of different effects: hall 2, room, plate, different reverbs, delay, chorus, vocal 1, vocal 2. Maybe these are like compressor with some delay. Oh no, so I see it right here. There's some delay. Some delay in there. And I guess one thing I see right away now that we talk about compression is that for each of the channel strips here, you have a gain knob, but you don't have the compressor. That was something I really liked about the L12, which maybe is something that I will miss on the L8. Perhaps there's some internal compression that they built into this, because I think a lot of users will want to be like out-of-the-box podcasters at home, and won't have a bunch of outboard gear, and maybe won't have a bunch of plugins either, and want to be able to just have their compression set right away in here. And that's actually what we did here. Even though we do have some outboard compressors in the house and we have tons of plugins, this was kind of cool to just have this set, the compressor set on the L12 to a nice level. You're hearing it right now. Yeah, if I crank it up, you hear like how it's not a super colorful compressor. It's like just does the job, keeps the dynamics nice and everything nice and warm and stuff. So I'll be curious how we use this and if we are at lacking any kind of compression. My suspicion is that somewhere in here is some compression, but let's see. Scene, I guess, is for when you're doing recording as well, maybe like as a standalone recorder. Multi-track mixer here. Mixer again is, I guess here we are again with listening to different mixes perhaps. I think this is more stuff for like standalone when you're not using a DAW like Audition or Cubase. And then recorder mode, that's the mode we would use on the field in the field, for video production. And it's pretty cool because when you toggle through these, they're nice and big, feel real nice. It immediately changes what the functionality of each of these is, and I assume it saves it automatically, and then when you switch back, it's still in the position that you left it. So, but again, in the podcast studio, we don't use this very much. We didn't use this very much because we do everything in the editing software. So yeah, that's what it looks like when it's on. Here's probably like the individual channel strip EQs. You can see here they have the select button just like they did on this one, and the arm. The arming, this is only again necessary when you're working with the working as a standalone mixer recorder. But when you select these, you can't select more than one, because basically whichever one is selected is going to pop up in this channel strip here. And I like the design of the Zoom mixers because, this kind of makes sense. They have this blue connection line here in the background so that you kind of connect visually that the channel strip here is changing depending on which channel you have selected. So it'll be interesting to get into here as to what effects are available in this. I can see with the L12, although we don't use effects that often, the effects are right here in a menu. You can toggle through them right on the front of the machine, and then you can select through your channels like this. And on here, I don't see this right away, so I'm guessing that you would have to go into your effect mode here, and then start changing factors here. Although when I turn this doesn't change. It changes when I do this. Okay, again, I need to read the manual and see how that's going to function. So maybe that's for another tutorial video if you want one. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. See, we have the master output section, monitor out, different mixes, which I guess could be important depending on who's listening, who's monitoring. Like if maybe the people that are listening in on the monitors, especially if it would be like a multi-track recording session, maybe they would want to have a different mix for, let's say, tracking guitars or bass even. Bass particularly maybe because they want to hear their bass nice and clear. So maybe it's possible to send a separate mix. Here we're at mix A, for instance. Maybe it's possible here to set a different mix that's going into mix A, so that when you toggle the monitoring out to mix A, that person is hearing a specific mix that they want to hear. Or you can select all of them to just get the master mix. So, yeah, I guess, for instance, this might also come in handy in podcasting, because if you want to make sure that each of I haven't really experienced the need for that in podcasting, but I could imagine if you really need to make sure that the other voices are of a certain level and your voice isn't too loud that you don't interrupt each other or not hear each other, then when you have headphones on and you're talking through microphones, maybe it's good to set that, but that's pretty subtle, I would say. Yeah, mutes, pretty cool. The next step would be to dive in and look at, check out the driver and see what the functionality is of this in the DAW, in Audition, for instance. And then I definitely want to try out these different things like the cell phone. I'm not really sure what the USB stuff is. I have to check this. I'm not really sure what that means. If there's some USB inputs, I don't know if they mean like running some external music maybe from a USB device. I don't know. That seems a bit complicated, but yeah, there you have it. That's my unboxing for the Zoom L8 LiveTrak, which is, I would say, very, very much meant for podcast studios. And that's why we have one of them here now. And we're going to try to implement that into our shows. And yeah, maybe after we do get a couple of weeks of work in, then we can come back and talk a little bit more about it. Let me know if you have specific questions in the comments about this unit. And we will answer them as best we can. So, cool. All right, guys. So that's the Zoom LiveTrak L8. I've been Randy from FREQS here in the Moonbase Studios in our podcast studio, and we've been checking out this great new podcast mixer. We're going to put it to the test and see if it's not a replacement for the L12, but maybe more suited as a podcast mixer than the L12. I think they really thought of having podcasters in mind when they made this. So I think there's going to be some functionality in it that beats the L12 for podcasting. And when we got the L12, we did do some research. There's a number of companies that have released podcasting mixers, but the L12 still, for me, was the better choice because it had a lot of functionality that I was afraid of not having in some of the smaller, more podcast dedicated mixers. And because we don't just do audio here, we also do a lot of video production. I didn't want to have any limitations in the audio mixer for video production. I didn't really think we would take the L12 on the road because it's a little bit too big for that, but certainly to take it into our video studio and out of the podcast studio to do some live tracking. Like actually we have something coming up where we're going to film an artist recording some acoustic stuff in our studio, but with a multicam video shoot. I think the L12 is going to be ideal for that because we can still run it into, for instance, Cubase as an interface, but we have the functionality of a live mixing desk to run all of that into a multi-channel DAW. So I think that's going to be really handy for that. And I didn't want to limit ourselves to just being able to use it for podcasting in case we needed it. But now that they've released the LiveTrak L8, really for podcasting, it's too early to say, but I have a feeling that this is now going to be the thing that sits in the podcast studio, and the L12 will be free for more video production or, multi-track audio sessions here in the studio. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you want me to break this down even further. I mean, we're going to put it to work now in the studio. We have some projects coming in. Let me know if you want me to go into depth about the functionality of it once we've learned how to use it. We'll be happy to do that. So that's it for today. Thanks a lot for tuning in. See you next time. FREQS out.